Hello, good afternoon, and this is Andrew Foss, and I'm on the line again today with Laura Walker. It is September 19th, and we are here to discuss the new moon in Virgo and the things that are going to be happening with us, to us, and through us through the rest of this astrological year. So with that, here is Laura Walker.
Well, thanks, Andrew. It's very nice to be recording with you again.
Yes, definitely. It's been a while, and I think it's great that we can get back to it and look at the energy for the month and kind of talk about things that are going on right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Thanks for the opportunity, and thanks for being able to do it.
Definitely.
This month of Virgo New Moon 2017, I'm calling Behold Felite, or Thy Will Be Done, because it's all about willpower and the force of our will this month. This month is like a month-long gibbous phase. So consider what a moon phase, gibbous moon phase. It's the phase right before full moon, and magic and mystical things happening. And basically we have that in effect all month long. And it's the second month that's a gibbous month. So we have two chances this year to engage the magic of the world, of life, and to strengthen ourselves by strengthening our trust in something greater than us. That's what gibbous is all about. So, and there's so much magical kind of imagery in the Sabian symbols that are in place at the new moon. So we remember that the degrees and the Sabian symbols that the planets are located at the time of the full moon is basically like a lock. It unlocks, and then those energetics are infused and they unfold all month long. So it's not just for September 20th, 2017, when the new moon enters. It's about what's going on all month long. And so even though we look at the Sabian symbols every day at Oracle Report of, where the sun and the earth and the other planets are, we remember that that's all couched in an overall or an overarching theme of the month, which is then couched in an overall theme for the year. And so just to refresh everybody, the symbol or the energetic theme that's in effect this year, this solar lunar year, is a woman's hat with streamers blown by the east wind. And so it's really been about equalizing, maintaining balance, a lot of things shocking us and just kind of blowing our minds, but a tremendous advancement. So this month, the main theme going on here is the willpower, and the sub-theme is time. Time meaning things that happen with time, or it's about time, and how that will bring about resolution and solutions. So let's start off with the Sabian symbol for the new moon, 28 Virgo, and it's a bald-headed man who has seized power. So we could think about who that might be in the world. Who knows?
I'm used by that one.
Yeah, but really it's us. It's each of us individually about seizing our own power and taking up our will. And this recording, we actually have some questions from the Parliament of Wise Owls, and so a lot of those questions that we have relate into this. And so I'll try to incorporate that, how we can use our will this month with some of the themes that people are asking about. Now, the Earth will be located at 28 Pisces, a fertile garden under the full moon, which is all about fertility and abundance and things coming to full light. But there's more. The new moon is actually in opposition with the planet Chiron this time. And Chiron is discharging the Sabian symbol, a harvest moon illuminates the sky.
Are you there, Laura?
Both deal with moons. Yes.
I'm sorry, you just blanked out for a moment, so re-say that.
Oh, do you remember the last thing you heard?
You were talking about the harvest moon.
Okay, so Chiron is in opposition to this new moon. They're opposite each other in the sky, and the Sabian symbol of Chiron is a harvest moon illuminates the sky.
Okay.
So we have both of those symbols of the moon, 27 and 28 Pisces, strongly in effect at the new moon, which means strongly in effect all month long. Illumination, clarity, revelations. Chiron is the wounded healer and teacher. And so this means that some of the things that we see might be hard to take. Some of the things we're seeing about ourselves, hard to take. The full moon always is about reflection. But these are positive symbols that that they're on our side. You know, this is about truth, and it's about things coming to light. And goodness, that truth has really been coming to light this year, the solar lunar year. So the will, force of the will, and timing, time for things. It's time. In addition to Chiron being opposite the new moon, we have a couple of other astrological aspects. Mercury is conjunct Mars at the new moon, and they are opposing Neptune. And I talked a little bit about this in the Oracle report today. Yes. Mercury is discharging a powerful statesman overcomes a state of political hysteria. Political hysteria is pretty much accurate, I would say, right now.
I would agree 100%.
And things with this symbol can get out of control, and it can be things that people are saying or thinking and then say. It can be very powerful, or it can be very detrimental. So there's a lot of energy with it to fuel it, because Mars is with Mercury, and Mars is at two heads looking out and beyond the shadows. And so it's automatically having us identify forms of duality and confusion, things that are unintegrated, and helping us ideally to see all or both sides and to overcome the divide and conquer initiatives that are so strong right now and have been, since 2012, but certainly since 2015. So we have all of that energy there to overcome, to take what's happening here and the energy to change our thinking, change the way that we're communicating, and to bring in equilibrium. Now, as I said, those two planets are in opposition to Neptune, which is retrograde right now, and Neptune is at a sword used in many battles in a museum. This is highly spiritual. Neptune is highly spiritual. Religion comes into play with it. And again, it's about the will for peace or war. And it exposes things and advances initiatives as well. Sometimes we'll have repeats in history, because it is about history, the symbol. Mm-hmm. So it'll be, very interesting to watch how we overcome the past with all this mind power that we have with Mercury and Mars. And I'm not talking about just politically or geopolitically. That's within our own lives as well, because what is the history of you that needs transformation of any of us? This is what we're presented with this month, is the opportunity to engage our inner stellate, our divine will, to advance out into the world and advance out our projects and just the side of goodness, truly. This month, the black moon is going to conjunct the galactic center. Right now, at the new moon, it will be located at the Sabian symbol 25 Sagittarius, a chubby boy on a hobby horse. This tells us that we want to practice something before implementing it. And there may be something that you feel like you've been practicing with or preparing for or getting ready for a really long time. Now is the time to move forward on those things. If you haven't been in the place to really do that, there's ample amount of energy to do that this month. When the black moon makes conjunction with the galactic center, a tremendous amount of light is going to be delivered to the planet, because The higher stellar frequencies will emanate, or it's an electrical alignment actually, with the black moon, which highest octave is rebirth, and really there is only a higher octave with the black moon, because it never operates without bringing the good side. It's always two sides, a de-evolution or a devolving at first, and then the second phase is the rise, like the phoenix, descending and rising. That's the black moon. And it takes you down, and it takes us down pretty far. And the farther that we go down with it, the higher we rise out of it. I'll talk a little bit more about this when I talk about black moon in Sagittarius.
Okay.
The black moon's going to be only going to be in Sagittarius until November 9th, so we're almost complete with this transit through Sag. Saturn is still in conjunction with the black moon. They're still very tight in the sky, close together. Saturn, if you recall, I've talked about it so much, Saturn's located at 22 Sagittarius, a Chinese laundry. This is all about expectations, restrictions, and moving beyond any of our own sense of unworthiness. Saturn automatically focuses on our unworthiness. It can, exaggerate our flaws or our places where we need to take responsibility, or try to structure us in ways and order things that are out of order. Not a big fan of Saturn. This is no secret here.
I'm with you there.
Saturn is the way that the archons get in on us. They have an in when there's a Saturn transit in somebody's chart, or in a new moon chart. And so we always want to remember that. And there's things that I want to pick up with that also. Pluto is still retrograde. It's at 17 Capricorn, a girl surreptitiously bathing in the nude. And that's all about facing ourselves, confrontations with ourselves, seeing clearly. Well, she's bathing in the nude, but we do have those moons, those two full moons, the harvest moon and the full moon. Harvest moon could also be a new moon also, but they're moon. It's about revelation and clarity. So that fits in with helping us to see the restrictions that we have that we're experiencing, or that we're imposing on ourselves even, and changing that up to engage the will, and to take up that sword, if you will. Venus is going to move into Virgo. It's going to move into Virgo just before the new moon. At 1 Virgo, and that Sabian symbol is, in a portrait, the best of a man's features and traits are idealized. So if there's some part of the picture or the truth that we're missing, or that we are idealizing, that shows through. Vanity will show through, places where we're in denial, or any kind of illusions that we've had that block us, that obstruct the way. Venus will try to remove. It's really, really important that we do take up portrait of the best of the features and traits. It's really very important this month that we don't minimize ourselves or fear and get caught up in a loop of any kind of power and control issue, obviously with the bald-headed man who has seized power, but also of not being caught staring at the darkness or only seeing negativity around us, like Mars with the two heads looking out and beyond the shadows. A true evaluation of who we are and the goodness of humanity is the saving grace this month. And it's what will help us get to that place of activation of divine will. Because what happens then? We are no longer victims. We aren't powerless when we do that. And so there's concerted efforts to instill a lot of fear, a lot of chaos and uncertainty and worry. And this happens basically every time this year, because when we get into the time when the sun moves into Libra, as it's getting ready to do, this is a late degree Virgo new moon. When we start to get towards the time of the sun in Libra, a lot of things happen in the world. The Illuminati always makes moves in October, and this is because it's the cycles, the natural cycles that they go by, that they do follow. It's the time when it's the full moon time of the year, and so it's the prime time to advance or manifest or bring to a fruition any type of plan, especially any plan that was made, or an intention that was set back at the beginning of the year in April at the new moon in Aries. That's the real reason we always have October surprises.
Mm-hmm.
And the planet Eris rules Libra, which is, Eris and Libra are their favored energetics for manipulation, as I've talked a lot about and written a book about.
Or another way to put it, it's time for them to try to make shit happen.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And also beyond that, because there's so many things that have happened in October historically to us, it's a trauma imprint over and over and over. So our bodies, aren't really thinking about that. Oh, what happened last October when it was the full moon month of the year, so to speak. We don't think about that. We aren't thinking about the timing of it. Really what's happening is our body is responding to that level of light, wherever you are, whatever hemisphere you're on the planet. Okay, so the fluctuations and the levels of light are the biophysical process by which the trauma is oftentimes imprinted. And so you may have had some traumatic experiences at this time of the year, late September into October, that you don't even realize that, you're having feelings about, but that are just happening because of the time, the sun hitting those degrees again and re-imprinting it.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other really big aspect that we have this month is Jupiter in opposition with Uranus. This is massive. It's just a huge, huge event. Jupiter has been playing around with Pluto and Uranus for a while now, and when Jupiter and Uranus are in aspect, we have big changes. And this is an opposition. That's 180 degrees. So it's also equivalent to a full moon phase. Oppositions, 180 degrees, full moons, same thing, but astrologically speaking.
Mm-hmm.
Jupiter, the keyword for Jupiter is big, and the keyword for Uranus is change. So we have big change. Jupiter is discharging an eagle and a large white dove turning into each other. And it's all about the will again, and strength, and the transformation that we can undertake to change via Uranus at a large disappointed audience. That's 28 degrees of Libra. That energetic is really, the large disappointed audience is one of the most difficult within the 360 Sabian symbols and degrees. There are a few of them, there are like 5 that, it's just every time they're activated, it's heavy energy, it's intensive, it can be very negative and sad and just very hopeless. This is a big part of why people are feeling so much hopelessness about the future and also desiring a change from it. So engaging our will and adjusting our expectations as we're having all of this light and clarity infuse us, coming down, just raining down upon us, understand that, first of all, it might wipe you out. It can be very draining, especially if you have 26 Libra, 28 Aries, those degrees, those cardinal signs there. If you have those in your chart, you might be really feeling dragged down right now. It's all for a purpose, though, and Uranus, as I always say, Uranus puts us where we need to be. My teacher is very clear about this, and I learned it in a big way when Uranus made conjunction with my son in the early 2000s. And once you understand it and once you live it, you can say without a doubt that it will put you where you need to be, even though you think that it's very difficult where you are at the time. It can be shocking. It can be traumatic. There's always a silver lining. It always works in our favor. So Jupiter will expand this tendency with Uranus. And the things that will be blowing our minds as the Woman's Hat with Streamers this year, we're going to see a lot of that this month. That's just coming down the road. So expect changes, plan for them, embrace them, open up space for them. Each of us knows changes that we need to make. That's what this month is about. It's designed for us to reconnect with our will, with the inner strength and force that we use to manifest in the world, to live and to follow mission and actualize potential. All of these energetics here are very, very supportive. It's lovely. It's just a beautiful thing. Lastly, the nodes, the North Node and the South Node. A lot of people don't know what these are, but when astrologers talk about the nodes, they're talking about the moon. And when those of us that have gone deep down the rabbit hole are talking about the nodes, we're talking about how society and humanity, how civilization is manipulated via the moon's nodes. The North Node represents the future and destiny. And the North Node is discharging a bareback rider in a circus displays her dangerous skill. Again, very powerful energies, just like the bald-headed statesman sees his power, control, hysteria. This, again, is taking control. The bareback rider displays her dangerous skill. She defies gravity, the drag, to acrobatically perform the maneuver. Sometimes we have a tendency to be more risky than others, so we would want to watch that. And it doesn't mean don't take risks, because this is a month where you really would want to take risks. In fact, this helps risk-taking when you are operating on the right side, when it's a positive thing that we're doing. It's very powerful, and having a brave heart and going about things that happen this month with the intention of attaining self-mastery from it. And by doing that really would be to be open, to be receptive to what's happening, will serve us well, because it's a display that we can make. We can display our will with this. Now, the lower octave, if you will, of this is people bragging or showing off or losing control, or just getting very, very worked up. Okay, but so what this says to us is the North Node, which is about destiny. So what this is driving towards, what's helping us move towards this month, is that expression of self in a real way, in a tangible way. The South Node, in contrast, represents the past and past lives and karmic lessons. The South Node is discharging a big bear sitting down and waving all its paws. With this one, we always go way above and beyond. We try to draw attention to something, or something tries to get our attention. This also can be getting knocked down or acting out. And it's a primary dynamic or energetic dynamic that is fueling Archons Gone Wild, what I call Archons Gone Wild, which is what's happening in multiple ways. So what's trying to get our attention? Is there something from the past? Is there some cycle? Or is there some repetition of something that's trying to get our attention for us to do differently, to make a big change, to engage our will to do differently? So this is a month that you really want to go for it. We don't want to hold back. because we can make such progress. This will require us to seize our own power and not let it be siphoned off of us in fear and negativity, like I mentioned, and all of the sadness, the large disappointed audience that we're seeing, because as things are coming to light, it's also very sad and can be hard to take. Of course, what I always talk about with that is the remedy for it all, to regain balance, is to go outside and be in nature and to ground ourselves, because grounding is really what the trick is with all of this as the end times unfold, is about getting back to basic values and the core of who we are, and all of the other things falling away, all of the things that aren't important becoming less important. So it is time to engage the will. That's really, you have to know what your will is, don't you? If you don't know, it should come to you this month. That Mercury-Mars opposition with Neptune is going to bring a lot of ideas, information, and creativity. Neptune rules creativity. And with the Mars there, we have so much energy for it, and our brains are in such good shape with Mercury there to move out of the past and to actually engage that will. So those are the Sabian symbols that are in effect. We have the Mahavidya, the wisdom goddess Shadashi, on duty this month for Virgo. Yeah, we love Shadashi, don't we?
We do love that. She's been talking to me since August, so.
Really?
Oh yes.
Yeah.
I always know when she's around. I can hear the beat behind me.
Yes, the drummer of it, and she just loves the cannon fire. You know, she just one after another after another. And Shadashi's actually been on duty with Bhairavi for the last month, because they've really been sharing this month. Bhairavi, who fortifies our heart, you know, the brave heart. And then Shadashi brings in this, she's the goddess of beauty, but she's also a palpable warrior force, and who basically directly targets the demiurge, Yaldabaoth, the chief archon.
Yes.
And Shadashi makes hay of the chief archon. And they never prosper when Shadashi is on duty. And Shadashi's just full bore now, because it's all full bore. The archons have gone full bore. Everything is on the table. They are going for it with everything in all arenas: free speech, internet freedom, currencies. Name anything, you know, nuclear war, you know, everything. It's all being pushed out. Why? Because they have to. Because they are running out of time, running out of power, running out of energy. They're only operating on energetic reserves. There is no more refueling that is happening. Even the rituals that the Illuminati undertake to pay their archonic masters in the interdimensional spaces doesn't really get it for them anymore. And this is because, as I've talked about many, many times, April 18th, 2015, when the new moon in Aries entered at the degree of the music of the spheres, complete reset and an end to the past, to the end of the archonic control. Now, since 2015, the archons have been progressively returning to source. We have also quite a rebellion going on within the Illuminati and the shadow government, you know, division, and they're just turning on themselves now. It's all imploding under its own weight. That's what we have to remember, everyone.
I think what I'm seeing, and as you kind of mentioned, they're just kind of throwing every bit of spaghetti that they've got against the wall in every different direction and looking for anything to stick. And I mean, it's a horrible mess, but it's still not sticking.
Yes, indeed.
And you look at it around the world. I mean, whether it's North Korea, whether it's Iran, whether it's Syria. Hey, what happened to Syria? What happened to all of these things that are going on? I mean, the revolution in what is that country, Venezuela? Wait a second, none of it's working for anybody. And it all is just falling apart, and it's hysterical to watch.
Well, what it does is it reveals the lunacy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Lunacy.
I mean, because none of it makes sense.
Mm-hmm. And we would expect that to be the curtain to be pulled back even more, having the two Sabian symbols with the new moon about the fertile garden under the full moon and the harvest moon.
Mm-hmm.
And I believe that we've seen an acceleration of the demise of the Cabal after David Rockefeller's death.
Yeah, I believe it.
Well, if you notice,
and the way I would describe it, it's kind of lost one of its heads. The Hydra is not working together right now, and you've got different factions going in different ways, and it's even difficult to track it when you know what's going on.
It is, because it's all falling apart. Very interestingly, within a week of his death, Harvard publicly announced the geoengineering, the aerial spraying.
Oh yeah.
And I believe I've been calling it Rockefellers Revenge because I believe his fortune was dumped into geoengineering.
Mm-hmm.
And reports from different wise owls around the world, places where they were not experiencing chemtrails the way we were up here, in the United States and Europe,
mm-hmm.
they are experiencing in New Zealand, Australia, where they didn't have it as much. They do
mm-hmm.
now. And basically they're not, the New World Order is not trying to hide their technology.
Mm-hmm.
That's been known to us that have been following it for a while, but that I believe that's really where that happened. And this is, I believe, has funded a lot of this acceleration. So we really have George Soros, as I like to call him, really the Hydra head really in control here.
Mm-hmm. He's about the only one that is out in the open admitting that he's having any part of it.
Yes, and what's happening within the Rothschild line is that's where you're having a lot of people just either leaving that whole paradigm or changing within the paradigm, because the Rothschild line is undergoing a change. I am no fan of any Rothschild. Don't get me wrong.
I see civil war there. I mean, if you take a look at everything happening in Eastern Europe and down to the Middle East, to me, that is a civil war of Rothschild proportions, because none of where I would expect the factions to be are they there. They're just not there. They're fighting with each other, and all of a sudden something will happen. It's like, who the hell just did what?
There's wake up happening within that genetic line that's
mm-hmm.
twisting around. I don't know where that's going to lead. All I know is that there's some of those people within that line are seeking redemption, and it's an interesting development. So,
how do you redeem that? I think the other point that you were saying about Harvard announcing about geoengineering, I think even more recently in the last month, you're finding a lot of the hardcore global warming lockstep scientists are coming out and saying, oh, well, yeah, there's geoengineering. I think my favorite one, Michio Kaku, who is just a scientific lunatic, has come out and admitted it. And it's like, wait a second, you drunk the Kool-Aid years ago. How the hell are you all of a sudden saying that it's going on?
Right, and it's gaslighting is what it is, because it's like, you people are crazy all this time, but then, but it's true, and now it's true. What does it do? It creates a lot of anger, and there's a lot of feeling around it, and then people just shut down, and just nothing to see here.
I mean, he's one. When I saw him admit that there was geoengineering, he's been the biggest proponent of look at global warming. And it's like, wait a second, by saying that there's geoengineering, you're admitting that all of it's been a farce. You're admitting it, dude. and you're coming out in public and saying it.
Yeah, they're coming out publicly and saying it because they have to reveal what they're doing because their time's up. And they know this. They knew that this time was going to come. They always knew when it was. The astrologers knew. The archons knew. So I went through that really quickly so that we could look at some of the questions that people sent in. So
wonderful.
The questions
do you have
a
place you want to start, or do you want me to start?
Start at the top.
Okay, we'll start at the top. We'll start with Karen, and her question was, when will the energies be more friendly, and how does someone in the black moon phase find ease until the time changes?
I think that's the question on a lot of people's minds.
Bunker down and hide.
Well, I take the view of the long game here, a 5-year long game, and takes me back again to 2015 when the Mahavidyas told me that by 2020, the majority of the archonic energies would have been dealt with here, and that the planet or our lives would be very different. And 5 years, I was like, oh yeah, right. I'm like, you want me to say this? Okay, but I did. And I've been surprised since then because we're at the middle point of that now. We're at the midway mark, and I never foresaw all of this level of change that we've had, the amount of truth and liberty that has risen to the surface. And so I'm fully on board with their timeline. I mean, I don't doubt it a bit. Our task is to make it through to that point because it will progressively become more intense until 2020. And so one way is to step back a little bit and adjust our expectations and realize that we are in a little bit of not see it so much on the micro and take it a more on a macro level. Now, truly, what's important is being alive, walking around, breathing, being you, and grounding your energetic into the grid of the planet. That's the purpose, okay? Really, you're golden. You've won by doing that. You're still here. Because some people have been quite challenged to be here. Now, the black moon in Sagittarius, the black moon will be in Sagittarius until about November 9th. I think that's the date. This has been a 9-month period of search for meaning and the search for truth. That's what the black moon in Sagittarius is all about. The polarity of Gemini, the opposite of Sagittarius is Gemini. The black moon in Gemini, because it activates both of those issues, both of those sides, is about self-acceptance and self-approval and not seeking in the outside world. And so I fall into that polarity as well as Karen. And what I have been able to understand in my study of the black moon over these many years is that there is only one way to handle it, and that's to surrender and accept, not fight it. Use it and work with it, because it's trying to facilitate a rebirth, and we can't try to jump the gun and rise or rebirth too early because it's just not possible. We can't skip the time. We have to allow the timing and the energetics of the astrology to unfold. And the best thing that anyone who has the sun, Chiron, or the black moon in Sagittarius or Gemini can do is to rest. The black moon is heavy. It's the goddess of the underworld, and it takes us down. It wants us to power down, stop, basically, slow down, and take care of ourselves, to go inward. And this requires us to rest, and which really isn't that hard a lot of times when you're having the heavy part of the black moon transit. That occurs when the black moon gets within 3 degrees of whatever planet it's aspecting for you. And so for that month, it's a journey through the underworld. And the best thing is to know when that time is, so you can plan for it and prepare and know that it will end. And at the end of it, a fabulous blessing is always delivered. The black moon taketh and giveth. I'm quoting Queens of the Stone Age now.
I mean,
somewhat.
and I'll say after last year when I went through it with my black moon in Aries, I believe it was in Virgo, a year and a half ago, and it was very much that. My favorite way of describing astrological aspects comes from surfing. You're out in it. You've got to deal with it. You better work with it than trying to work against it. You work against it, and you flow, and you're out. You've got to find a way to work with the flow of the energy and give yourself time for it to catch up to you.
Yes, allow the time for the deconstruction, because you're not going to be able to avoid it, and it's a natural process anyway. And so it happens every 9 years, and again, it's about resting as much as you can, giving yourself permission to rest and to allow it to happen, because it takes place at very deep levels of consciousness, not just in our waking consciousness. In fact, not really as much in that. So, I'm right there with you, Karen. We do remember I said that the black moon is going to conjunct the galactic center, and that degree is the sculptor's vision taking form. And so really, again, it's about understanding that it's temporary, that it's a definite process at play, working on you to make you a better person. And if we can reframe it and surrender and dive gracefully like a swan instead of the flailing something or another, it's easier on us.
You don't want to be a turkey falling off a roof.
Exactly. Yeah, we want to swan, be the swan with it.
Yes.
And then just be reborn. So we're going to have Black Moon in Capricorn coming up, and we'll talk about that next month when we record. And we'll just finish out this truth, meaning, self-acceptance, and approval. Okay,
our next question comes from Weizhou Elena, and he wants to know about, you had talked in the past about certain white hats actually being dark hats, and wanted to know if you could, I believe he said name names.
Yeah, I can name names, and I will. And I'm going to try to control myself when I talk about this, because my earth energy gets a little engaged with this. So let's see if I can rein it in a little bit here. Yes. As the great winnowing and the great revelation of truth continues to unfold, we should not be surprised that people that we thought were presented as white hats, meaning they're on the side of everything, truth, liberty, the Constitution, goodness, humanity. Perhaps we're not as pure in that as they would have us believe. And I'm talking specifically about Steve Pieczenik, who is the role model of the Tom Clancy books, the Jack Ryan books that Tom Clancy wrote. CIA, naval officer, psychiatrist, general grandfatherly guy, who I've never really quite had a good grip on because he's CIA, and how do you ever? But what he did a couple weeks ago was out himself in an emotional fury that overtook him, where he was speaking just like any contemptuous shadow government operative as far as his feelings about humanity and our ability to handle the truth. You always hear the military officers who become familiar with certain information, military personnel too, people in general, thinking that we the people can't handle something. And so it's their job to protect us. Well, who made you God? We the people are fully ready to face all of the truth. And there was an interview that he did. It's on Alex Jones's show. I think the video is called Steve Pieczenik Breakdown or something like that. And the way that he was discussing Trump and some concern over Trump's bodyguard, his loyal bodyguard, longtime bodyguard, being dismissed, basically forced out, and concerns about who is really having any access to the president. Pachenik was very upset about this information, truth or not, we don't really know. But in what appeared to me in his mishandling of that situation, of that information coming out without his control, and what I mean by that is his attempt to control or handle Alex Jones. I'm not going to defend Alex Jones. I'm not here to, love him, hate him, whatever. It's a source of information that come out to look at, along with a lot of other outlets.
Willing to talk about it.
Yeah, whatever. We can address anybody's information. But what this showed was Pachenik, who was a psychiatrist, caught off guard, trying to spin a situation and using his psychiatric knowledge to do something that is forbidden in any type of therapeutic work, psychiatry, astrology, anything. You never use knowledge of one's shadow side against a person unless you want it to blow back on you tenfold. And this is what he was doing in this. Now, I worked in the psychiatry, in the psych field, if you will, mental health field, for many years. I worked in psych hospitals. I have worked with many, many psychiatrists. There isn't one of them I would ever want to have a conversation with outside of taking their orders. And I know that's a generalization, but really, you people are drug pushers, and that's the bottom line. And so Pachenik used his status within the intelligentsia, and he completely outed himself, in my opinion, as somebody who still has, who like the dark hats, the black hats, thinks that humanity is just too undeveloped, unevolved to be real with, to be not manipulated. And furthermore, he made, in my opinion, I think he kind of showed the hand of what might be happening with Trump, which is possibly some blackmail or some threats. Because he made some comments about Trump. Trump just needs to be quiet, and he has a nice family. And who are you, Steve Pachenik? Give me a call.
No, I will say that I get the feeling with Trump. Let's face it, Barack Obama fell in line within seconds of gaining the presidency. It took Trump about 6 months, but take a look at the people around him, and you know that there isn't a whole lot of control on his side anymore.
The Trump story is a much bigger story, and I'm going to be on Phoenix's show tonight, so I won't. I'll go over his chart with that.
I'll let you talk about that, and I can't wait to hear it.
Yes, indeed.
Okay. Also, he asked if you could say anything more about China and about the potential factions of the New World Order within China. I think everybody looks at China as this one great big red nation, but I don't know that it is exactly that.
Yeah. Well, China, like Russia, and like all the countries, are looking out for their own interests. And right now, with that, it's trade and finances with China. The globalists, the Cabal, the Illuminati, they hate China. They don't like anyone who is not Nordic, basically, of Germanic origin, descent. And I view China as basically what I think you've called the battery of the Matrix, right, Andrew?
Exactly. Just
plug a lot of people.
Plug the people in and let them produce.
Yes, and they're basically a giant sacrifice waiting to happen for a blood sacrifice for archons. That's the reason that the population has what the globalists have done in China, because the globalists made China. Kissinger and Bush Sr. made China. We know this. As far as the factions, like we talked about, there's so much dissent within, and civil war within the factions. They're playing the system to their advantage. Russia's playing the system to its advantage. Putin is. There appears to be collaboration behind the scenes between all these major powers in the secret space program. And so what they present to us as on the math, on the risk game board, is much different than what's happening in the skies. I think that Putin was waiting for his opportunity to mend fences with the West and bring about the unity, the harmony for all, for everyone. And he may still have that opportunity with Trump, and we'll see that. But Russia is not, or China, are not in a military position to challenge the U.S. in any kind of conventional sense. There is this phenomenon that I think that we're just all starting to kind of figure out about duality. And I'm not saying Lance is thinking this way at all, but our tendency, we have been conditioned to think that things are either, or people are either all good or all bad. It's an either or, it's a zero sum. It's not reality because it's gray. It's really gray. It's not black and white. There's mixtures of all within it, and we really back ourselves into a corner, and it's a big archontic trap when we try to go on what is, oh gosh, what's the word I'm looking for? It's when we split our thinking and try to think that it is in the dualistic way of this or that, when it's much more complicated than that, and we seek that one answer when it's a complicated answer.
Oh yeah.
And so in all things, we're always like, is it good, is it bad? That's really not the level of consciousness we need to be trying to understand these things with, because remember, we are working out of end times and working into a fifth dimensional consciousness, and so there's going to be some weeding out of all of that. I don't know if that fully answers the question, but
I think it goes there. I kind of like your point with the whole, duality. It's not all good and all bad. And I think, unfortunately, with the news media these days, even the mention of Putin, the question is who's good and who's bad are we talking about today, and from whose perspective? They honestly crack me up because of the entire political statement of, Russia is trying to hack our election. It's like, who gives a shit? Would you just wake up to the fact that there was an election and you lost, and it's over because they weren't in there as close as anybody was claiming? I mean, right now we've got an entire Mueller and all of his people spending billions of dollars to what's going to be in the end try to slap someone on the wrist.
Yeah, well, and I think where that's all going is to try to overturn the election and put Hillary back in, because Hillary is nonplussed lately. Have you noticed? She's quite not at all bothered by things. She's just having a good old time. What does she think is going to happen?
She's been spending some time in Colorado because she just seems way too chill.
Well, I mean, she certainly doesn't. She seems smug, more so than normal.
Yeah, very smug.
And so it's like, what are they saying? What are they telling her? What's going on? I guess we might find out this month.
It will be interesting to see. Okay, that being said, want to go to a new question. Let's see. Let's go to Fernando, who was asking, can Laura comment about when she said the apparent mental or emotional breakdown was happening because Shamanic Initiation was underway? He thinks it was back in February or March, and wanted to know your thoughts on it or update on that.
Right. So what is happening in this 5-year time period between 2015 and 2020 is a shamanic initiation. It is an initiation into a higher level of consciousness, and breakdown always precedes that. When and how the breakdown occurs for us is different, and is, of course, going to be timed and understood through one's astrology chart and the transits of the planets at the time. And so it happens at different times in different ways for different people. It is a natural process. And when we can understand the dissolution that comes before a resolution, we understand the process, and therefore we are more accepting of it. And so when I was talking about that, it was to try and bring some light to a higher perspective on breakdown and about what's happening, because if you recall back in February and March, that things were very uncertain. It was tenuous back then. Not that it isn't now, but I think we're on a little more solid footing than we were then.
Yeah.
That was a really precarious kind of point right there. It's not a bad thing, and we view it that way because it does not really facilitate our success within the matrix oftentimes. But shamans understand it, and they recognize it, and they're able to identify it when people are having it. And it's a journey. It's the shamanic journey. It's part of the journey. It doesn't happen any other way. And so as hard as that is, it is part of that process, and part that we have to make friends with and try to take a little bit of the judgment off of.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, the next one is by Weizhou Elena, and I want to read a story that she had sent to us in the form of a question, and then we can talk about it. It's a little bit long, so everybody hunker down and listen up. Okay, here it goes. I would be keen to know more about the potential available to us through us on 22 September through October and onwards, as it involves breaking free from the abuse matrix of power over will over others, specifically as it involves corrupt judiciary and government, who are the central and perpetrating slavery for profit. I am witnessing many other good people in great pain and distress, which is also our pain, as it involves the judiciary. My husband was assaulted a year ago, and all has been turned against him in a very disturbed and lying assaulter, who is a neighbor, and a bent copper-pushing guy to press charges 2 weeks later. Plenty of time to create a shocker of a story, all based on hearsay. A liar's claim against Max. In the past, Max worked to hold police to account in regards to a matter. He was consequently targeted by a cop, yet is an innocent victim in a story who was forced to defend himself, as all men have the right to do. Never involved in violence. He is 66 years young, but has been targeted for takedown by a cop and a corrupt judiciary. Max is a guy who simply spoke up to the abuses, asserting rights and freedoms. However, he was in prison for 2 months and is being forced to get a lawyer, which was conditional for his release last week. Courts only deal with the dead straw man. We feel trapped and defeated, as Max was capable of speaking for himself, but has been silenced and sabotaged from the beginning and unable to do so. We thought for sure this case would be dropped, but no. Feels like the Inquisition come full circle. And
yes, indeed. Max is over the target, so he's taking the flak. And my question really would be, what was Max doing before all of this started? What was he getting ready to do in the world or working on? Because obviously that's an archonic attempt to silence, as she said, as Alana said, to silence this. And probably Max has a pretty good bit of Heirs Point energy in his chart, and this is targeted specifically because it is so effective at bringing forth or bringing the truth to light or bringing things to light, justice. And so when you have that direct confrontation with evil, because the archons are going wild, it takes its worst form within the corrupt court system. Because the primary reason for this is because it's so very effective It's so very effective to play at that level and to win. However, that said, Max won because Max held his ground. Max is still here, and Max has lost the battle but not the war. Again, looking at the longer picture here, the long game. So as these things are happening, like I said, sometimes we don't see at the time that another outcome or silver lining will happen. And I have a feeling that this will happen for Max because this is what I'm seeing. And one of the lovely things about my work is that I get the benefit of a lot of information from all of the wise owls who write me and that I talk to, and it gives me a good sense of the way things are going with people, and I can see when the trends are because of the sample size. So I'd like to tell a story that kind of is in a different way, went the way Max's story went, and then all of a sudden changed. So, and I will, I know we're limited here, Andrew, on time.
That's quite all right.
So I have been consulting with a small group of wise owls over last year, a little bit longer, as a Fortune 100 company, far below Fortune 100 company that acquired the company that they worked for, began to just savage them and not pay them and not even follow their contractual obligations, and just over the months wear down the people. And they were losing a lot of their income. And so when the wise owls figured out the game and that they were just, that the line was just being fed to them over and over again to make them feel more and more powerless, to wear them down, and to divide them. When they took stand and did other things, left, they didn't drop it. They began to pursue it through the EEOC and those lines. But what happened in the course of events, the universe intervened, and things started happening to where a very, very prominent lawyer with a tremendous history of going up against these mega corporations, and who revels in it, really, took the case within hours of hearing about it and agreed to do it only on contingency. So what would have cost, tens and tens of thousands of dollars to try and fight this machine, the Death Star, as I always call it, took a turn. So they have, a legal team retained at all times to basically just run down anybody who speaks up against it, who tries to stand up for themselves. And so what has resulted is moving forward with a class action lawsuit. And I have no doubt that the case is so solid, I have no doubt that they will win if it goes to court, because probably the Death Star will settle, and if they're wise, they will.
Yeah.
And they can stop this torture and suffering, because this is what they do. This is what the Matrix does. This is what the Archons do. So when the courts get you, it is a one thing. When it's, the corporate world or with your job, it's another. Of course, one can involve your liberty or not. Max was in jail. The Matrix, they got me through the court system. I was indicted by a federal jury, and I had 2 years probation. I didn't win that battle, but I will win the war. And we all will. Because why? Because we endured it. And when the Archons take action against somebody that is unholy and evil and wrong, all it does is empower the person that's the victim, let's say, of it. And now that we're in the 2.5 years into fifth dimensional consciousness, the game doesn't operate the way it used to.
No.
And so we see, like I said, the universe, God, hacking in, hijacking certain things. And we can see this happening in a lot of ways. Miracles are happening. They really are. I'm hearing about them all the time. I didn't used to hear these things. It is quite noticeable.
Mm-hmm.
But the point to the story isn't over, Alana. And what will come of it now? What will come of it if Max takes the stand of the bald-headed man seizing power? What might Max do now? Max might write something.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? It doesn't matter if two people read it. It's just a matter of doing it. I'm saying this so that people can try to apply this to situations in their own lives, because we're all dealing with it, with the archons. You know, they any way they can get in, they want to. So the key to it is to not become the victim. That's gonna happen. We have to go through the feelings. I certainly felt like a victim. But I tried to make more of it and to continue with my mission, because my trouble started when I started the Oracle Report. Plain and simple. Okay. Perseverance is how we win.
Mm-hmm. You were shedding light on things they didn't want opened.
Absolutely. And so we don't give up. That's it. We persevere. The former employees of the Death Star didn't give up. They wouldn't stop. And they didn't have the money, and they didn't know how they were going to do it, but something happened. A miracle happened, and resolution unfolded. So that's a story we need to hold close, to remember that, hey, all of these monster corporations are all falling. All of this power and control system is falling. It's too heavy. It's gone way beyond bounds, and truly anything that is done in the dark just blows back on people immediately now. You just can't get away with things that like you used to, people, these awful acting people and acting ugly. It's just not going to work. The sooner you realize that and get right, the better off you're going to be. It's just the way it is now. It's just the law. You can see it happening every day.
Mm-hmm. It kind of goes back to where we started. Thy will be done. It will. Yeah. It will happen.
Absolutely. Let's not forget. Remember, all roads lead to liberty. That's what we're working for here. Mm-hmm. You know, this is an intense month, but it is a powerful month where we the people, let's take control back. This isn't, a one-person train here. This is all of us working together. Mm-hmm. We aren't giving up here. We've only just begun. And what else? We've already won, because we're on the right side. Because what do we want? Wisdom, will, truth, and love. Very simple.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, I think that's going to do it for this conversation. I thank you, Laura. I think that kind of brought everything full circle with all that we've been talking about. You want to give a last shout out for tonight at Phoenix?
Oh yes, if you're listening in advance of that, to join in Phoenix tonight on Truth Frequency Radio, 7:30 to 9 p.m., where I'm going to be talking about things I didn't talk about in this recording because I really didn't want people to have to hear repeated information. So there will be other things in that one, and thank you to everyone who sent in questions. I know we didn't get to them all, and I really would like to get to them all, so perhaps we can do this in a couple of weeks if the energies work out that way. And I really love it when people send in questions, because then I can know where kind of to take things. So thank you so much for everybody. And let me just say also, thank you, Andrew.
Oh, thanks.
Thank you for being the stalwart, always there for the Oracle Report and for all the Wise Owls and for everything that you did while I've been recovering. Without Anna and Andrew, Oracle Report just wouldn't be. It's totally a group effort here, and it isn't just the three of us; it's all of us.
Definitely,
and I love that.
It is the Wise Owls, and I'm doing it for a reason, and it's all clear to me. I'm just happy to continue to spread the word and to shed light where darkness is.
Yeah. Thank you. Thanks, everybody, for listening.
Yes, thank you all.